welcome to the Fairly Relatable podcast.
It's like therapy with your best friends, minus the copay. Today's episode's a little bit different. Taking a deep breath before we start. I'm going to do more of a interview of Kara, and we're going to talk today about Kara's journey with breast cancer. We do think this is a really relatable topic because rates are increasing and pretty common these days for someone to know someone who's gone through this. So let's just get into it. And hopefully people can really learn a lot from what you're going to share.
Yes, that is the goal. Like I want to make that really clear that the goal is that by me sharing, just spread awareness, get it out, because the rates are going up. All the doctors I've worked with have said that it's now 1 in 8 women at some point in their lifetime will deal with breast cancer. And it's just not to scare everybody, but it's popping up around me left and right. So that's why we want to talk about it. And I'm happy to share my story and just hope that you guys listening can find it relatable or just helpful or eye-opening in some way.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just start from the beginning. How did this journey start for you? How did you find out?
Yeah, we'll take it from the top. So let's see. It was July 2022. I noticed that I had kind of a bump or a mass in the upper outer quadrant of my right breast. It felt like almost like a walnut under the skin, like kind of superficially under the skin. And I thought, oh gosh, that's strange. And then I get on Dr. Google and it says, oh, it could be, if you can move it under the skin, it's probably a fibroadenoma. Fibroadenomas are benign. So that means they're not cancerous. So I thought, okay, well, I made an appointment with my OBGYN's nurse practitioner just to have it checked. She felt around. She said, I think it's a fibroadenoma, but I'm going to send you to the imaging downstairs. This was at a hospital. I'm going to send you downstairs for imaging. So I had an ultrasound and a mammogram done. The doctor comes in, looks at my images, comes in to the waiting room, or the exam room, I should say. And she says, oh, I think it's a fibroadenoma. It's 3 centimeters. I think it's a fibroadenoma. You're good to go. Come back in 6 months. And I said, okay, well, hold up. What is that? I already knew what a fibroad, but I wanted to hear from her. What is that? Okay, well, what causes it? She said, well, it's glandular and it runs in families. It's hereditary. And I said, well, no one in my family has this. And she said, okay, well, you're good to go. Come back in 6 months. So I leave. 6 months goes by. I called to make an appointment. They're booking out a month. So it technically was 7 months I went back in. She does the same set of imaging, mammogram, ultrasound. Same doctor comes into the exam room and says, she asked the look on her face. She's like, have you noticed it change? I said, no, I live with it. She's like, well, it's bigger and it's changing. And I see, what did she say? I see calcifications and necrosis. Necrosis is like dead tissue. And then she said the words. She was like, I think it's breast cancer. And it was in that instant, it was like, holy shit. Like everything I had thought and assumed about my body and my life and just shifted. Emotional whiplash. It was like, boom. So I got diagnosed on February 2nd, 2023. It was a Thursday. So she said, I fell apart. I was crying, called my husband at work. He left work. It was just, it's crazy even talking about it, like brings me right back there. And she said, we need to biopsy this. And I said, well, how soon? Like through tears, I'm like, how soon? Because I'm thinking if she tells me a week from now, let alone 2 or 3 weeks, I will die. And she said, I think because she realized she kind of effed up a little in the diagnosis part. She leaves the room, comes back in and says, come back in an hour. And I said, okay. I left, came back in an hour with my mom. My husband was on his way home from work and had the biopsy. I didn't know for certain if it was breast cancer until the following day. That was a Friday, which I also had my daughter's 5th birthday that night.
Yeah.
That was crazy. I'm like walking out the door to go to the little trampoline place in our area. And I get the call from the doctor confirming it is breast cancer. And I said, what type? Because there's so many types, right? Which I'll talk about. And I was really worried. I didn't know what type I had. She said, we don't know the type yet. We're not going to know for a while, but it's breast cancer. And I'm like, shit. Okay. So that weekend, those were the hardest couple days of my life ever, hands down. Didn't know what type I had, didn't know how long I was going to live. Started having sort of like weird thoughts and memories of things throughout my life that were coming up where it was like it was almost like, they say your life flashes before you.
Mm-hmm.
It was like that, but a really slow process. I didn't realize it at the time. I was having panic attacks. I couldn't get a deep breath for that entire weekend. I started seeing stars. I'd have to sit down. I went to a store with a friend just to like try to get my mind off of it. I had to sit Down in the store. I'd always had anxiety, but I never had that. So then Monday rolls around and I have my first appointment with a doctor. This is doctor one. I ended up seeing a second doctor as well, but the first doctor, I'm sitting in there. I like can barely breathe. She comes in and the first thing she says is, "You're so young." And I said, "Yeah." And
This
I'm
is
like,
not the doctor.
not the doctor I ended up working with.
No, but it's not the doctor that
Diagnosed it?
Yeah.
No, that was a radiology
Okay.
doctor. She works with the radiology department
Okay.
at the hospital. This was a breast cancer surgeon that I met with. That was the
Mhm.
first thing I had to do was meet with a surgeon to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
And she puts a piece of paper in front of me with the different types of breast cancer. I had already researched all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself, please don't let it be this type or this type. Please, 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 please. And I couldn't even speak. I just pointed to one of the types and I said, is this what I have? One of the scary types. And she goes, no, 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 no. You have ERPR positive. What that means is my tumor was hormone based. So it feeds off of estrogen, little bit progesterone. It was like 5%. It was like 95% estrogen. And I said, am I going to die? And she says, well, we're all going to die one day, but you're not going to die from this. And I'm like, okay. But I still was just so incredibly just terrified and anxious. She was a good doctor. I could tell she was a good surgeon. She was highly recommended, but she wasn't for me. It wasn't a fit. I didn't like that. I had to point to the paper to ask her what type I had. I didn't like that. It's like,
She wasn't going to offer it up?
I guess maybe she needed a minute, but I'm literally in this appointment for the first time learning about, because the pathology report had come in by now. So I knew Friday that I had breast cancer. I didn't know what type until Monday. She was the first one to tell me the type.
Oh my gosh. So, and then you're throwing birthday parties. Your birthday was also within that week.
So
or
this
the
was
next day.
I was diagnosed 5 days before my 40th birthday.
Yeah.
So Monday was the 6th. My birthday's the 7th. So the 7th, I go see my friend's mom, Dr. Memzik. Cannot say enough good things about her. She is amazing. So I'm sitting in the lobby. This is just, she's another breast surgeon, right? So I was kind of like getting a second opinion, but I knew I was going to work with her because I love her daughter. And I was like, I need to be with like someone I know. And I'm sitting in her lobby on the floor, dizzy, seeing stars, can't get a breath. And I'm convinced it's the cancer. I'm like, it's in my brain. Like, oh my gosh, I get into the appointment and she just like comes over, gives me, she's everything I needed. She gives me a big hug and she's like, I'm like, am I going to die? And she's like, what did she say? I don't know, something kind of witty. I don't know, but it was what I needed to hear. And she gave me this big hug. And it was at that appointment, I was able to literally take a breath. Finally, I could like, okay, I can breathe. I think I can do this. I think I can do this. And then of course, the next question was chemo. Like, do I have to do chemo? This is insane. It's always been my biggest fear. Growing up, I would see like the marches on TV and the women in the pink. And it was always like, ooh, I'm never going to have to deal with that. I don't have any family history of breast cancer.
I know.
I tested negative for the BRCA gene. So here we are. She's saying, we don't know yet. We don't know if you do. We need to see what your oncotype score is. That's like the aggressiveness of the tumor, how likely it is to come back. So there was that. And then so I just kind of kicked into gear. I had to make a ridiculous amount of appointments in a ridiculous amount of time. Our good friend Erin she has a contact that was able to get me in for the first, there were a series of scans and imaging, but for the first time, right, the next day.
Everything
Thank you,
happened
Erin.
very quickly.
Yeah.
Care from the moment of diagnosis to your surgery, how long was it?
So I was diagnosed on February 2nd, and then the surgery was March 1st. I was like, get this out.
It felt faster. Okay. But it was a month.
It was a month.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I did the double mastectomy. They got clean margins, checked my lymph node, because that's the thing, is they want to know, is it in the nodes?
Yeah.
And that was, so the first, obviously the worst part was finding out I had breast cancer and not knowing if I was going to live. Then when I found out, okay, you're probably going to be all right. It's the estrogen type. All right. But I got a long road ahead. It was like, okay, now I can take a breath. Then it was chemo. I was worried about that. Then it was, what was it that you just, the node. I was just praying like, God, please, please don't let it be in the node. So I wake up from surgery, double mastectomy. I wake up and I'm kind of coming to, and I overhear a nurse saying, blah, 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 talking to someone, negative node, and I was like, did you say negative node? Did you? And she looks at me and she goes, yeah, I'm pretty, yeah. And she's talking, yeah, negative node.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you just for a second. Talk about why you don't want it in
the node.
Yeah.
So there's a network of lymph nodes that are, I'm not a doctor, but they're connected to the breast, right? And so there's the sentinel lymph node. That's the main big one. And ideally you get the tumor out, there's clear margins, and the cancer cells have not made it into a node, because once they're in the lymphatic system, they can go anywhere. But having it in the nodes is not a terrible thing. I also want to make that really clear. But it's scary. I didn't know all of this. So all I'm thinking is like, don't have it in the node. Don't have it in the node. Well, I know women who have had it in their nodes, and they're just fine, and they're going to be just fine. So I want to make that really clear. Which Dr. Memzik said, Kara, I have women who have it in 15 lymph nodes, and they still send me Christmas cards every year. And I was like, I love you, Dr. Memzik. She was just so reassuring. So that's why you don't want it in the node. So I found out it was not in the node. However, my oncotype score, again, the aggressiveness and the likelihood of recurrence for my tumor was really high. So I did have to do chemo.
Before we go into the chemo journey, can you talk about your surgery and how you decided to do the double mastectomy? Because you did the removal, but you also...
Yeah, that's a really good question you're asking, because this is a big part of the journey that women have a hard time with. What do I do? Do I do a lumpectomy where they're going to go in and take out the tumor? We hope it doesn't come back, right? Am I going to do, what would they call it? Like a single mastectomy. I don't know what the proper word is, where you just take the breast tissue, tumor and breast tissue out of one breast, and then reconstruction tries to match, which is what I was going to do first once I met with the reconstructive surgeon. So there's a breast cancer doctor that takes out the breast tissue and the tumor during the surgery. Then the reconstructive surgeon comes in and puts the implants in and tries to make them look right.
You really loved her too, right?
Dr. Huang, I have so much love for her. I had an amazing team. I'll get to my third doctor in a little bit. He's phenomenal as well. But these two women were just angels. I love them so much. So she and I were talking about the options, and then it kind of just occurred to me, and I thought, wait, why wouldn't I just have it all taken out? Because there can be a likelihood of, even if you have one, it can go to the other. And I was like, I don't want any of that. And I want them, aesthetically that wasn't my biggest concern. But, if you can make them look decent, that's nice too. So I asked Dr. Huang, I was like, well, what about doing both? She was like, absolutely. And then I asked Dr. Memzik, the surgeon that I had, my friend's mom. And she said, yeah, like, absolutely. That's a great choice. So that's how I decided to do that.
And you decided to, I don't know if you say you do an implant. I don't know what you call it.
Implant.
But because don't some women, they put in things to stretch it first and then do another surgery to put in the implant, but you did it all in one surgery.
I did it all in one because I had enough room or space, right? I mean, I'd had kids. It was like rocks and socks. Let's be honest.
No,
it was
not.
It was like to my belly. Well, not to my belly button, but whatever. My boobs were like triple E when I was breastfeeding and stuff. So they were big. And so when you take away the breastfeeding, you have rocks and socks.
I don't have a memory of that, but
okay,
I believe you.
So I decided to do the double and do the implant. And I didn't care about size really. But for women who are really small chested, they sometimes will opt to have spacers put in. Expanders, I think is the term. You put in expanders and then you go in a month later and they make them a little bigger. And then until you have enough space to accommodate the implants. So I didn't need to do that part. I just had the surgery. Memzik did the removal. Juan came in, did the implants. Everything worked out really great. And then it was time for chemo. That puts us at like April. I think April 13th or April 12th.
And the chemo, from my memory of how it was really hard.
Second hardest part.
Yeah. It was really, really hard for you deciding to do it, how many rounds to do, the side effects.
Oh yeah. It was the hair loss. And it could sound vain or superficial to some, and that's fine if that's how it sounds, but it's not. Our hair, especially as a woman, is such a part of our identity that
especially yours.
I loved. I'm happy to have my hair back a little bit, but like I loved my hair. I loved it. I always wore it long. I always, did stuff with it. And just the thought of losing my hair and everyone around me, it's like, the logical part is like, well, it's going to grow back. And it's like, that's not what this is about here. Like, I know it's going to grow back, but to have to go through that, I felt like the only, I guess, metaphor or analogy I could come up with is I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff and there was a wall that just went as far as the eye can see left to right that was just slowly pushing me towards this cliff. I didn't want to do it. It was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, but I kind of had to do it because my oncotype was high. So decided to do it. I did 6 rounds. My doctor said, if you can do 6, this was my oncologist now. So I have the breast surgeon, the reconstructive surgeon, and then my oncologist who manages the chemo and the medication that I take now. He started me. He said, if you can do 6 rounds, go for 6. I said, well, would you recommend to like your sister or your daughter? And he said 6. He's like, if you can do 6, do 6. So I did all 6. And I mean, the emotional, that was like nothing I'd ever experienced. It's a very weird, dark, sad. It shuts off your hormone, it shuts off estrogen. So you kind of like start to go into chemical menopause. So I was dealing with like the emotions of that and then feeling like I'm being told that this is preventative because I had clean margins and all that. But I'm still doing chemo. It put me in this weird thing of like, am I a cancer patient? Am I not? Very dark.
Like, why am I doing chemo if you told me everything's fine?
Yeah. So I did the chemo, finished that July 26th, 2023 was my last chemo round. And then what I did from there was my oncologist put me on medications that block estrogen. Since my tumor fed off of estrogen, we needed to shut all of that down. So now I'm in kind of chemical menopause. I take a Lupron shot every 3 months to shut down the ovaries. And I take anastrozole every day to shut off the enzyme that has something to do with estrogen. I don't know the ins and outs of it. And then I also take another medication. It's a newer one that blocks like proteins, cancer cells or something. I don't know.
I want to go back to your chemo journey a little bit. How long was it from start to finish?
So I started chemo April, I want to say 12.
It was every 3 weeks,
Every
right?
3 weeks, every
Times
21
6.
days times 6.
So 18 weeks.
Ended in July 26 was the last one.
So just shy of 6 months.
Yeah, it's like
right?
4.5 months.
Okay. Can you just kind of talk about how you got through that?
Yeah.
Because I know how hard the days were.
Yeah.
After you had
the infusions.
Yeah, the infusions. And then just your mental health and your physical health. You have young children. One thing that you did, Kara, that I will always just be in awe of is you never stopped working and you're a therapist. So you would sit as you're going through this journey of just so much unknown and fear, so much, and listen to other people's problems. Your strength actually from start to finish has been the fact that you're talking about it right now so vulnerably, but like together your strength has been absolutely incredible. But what did you do from start to finish during that chemo journey to get yourself through?
Mm-hmm. Thank you first for that. I have an incredible network of people, like an incredible network of people in my life, my family, my friends, like, my husband took over when I did all of that. He dealt with the kids. I would just kind of lay in bed. The way chemo works for the regimen I was on was you would have the infusion and then like 2 days later is when the side effects would start. And it felt like hard to put into words, really hard to put into words, very, very yucky. It was a very yucky, disgusting feeling, tolerable, not like what you see on TV, where it's like bent over a toilet throwing up. And they told me in the infusion station, it's not going to be like that. And we have meds for everything. It's not like that. We use different drugs now. But it was a terrible feeling. It was like a flu-y hungover, but like a weird one. It was bizarre. And I would just lay in bed and, the kids would come lay here and there, but it would be hard to open my eyes sometimes, can't like sit and look at my phone. I just felt like shit. So, I mean, you had the kids one weekend.
Yeah.
We'll get to the hot flashes
Okay.
because
Do
I
you
get
think
hot
it's just
flashes.
coincidental you had it, or is because
No.
you're talking about it?
It could be a little bit of both, but which is interesting. A quick segue. I do think that the hot flashes, yes, it's because I'm in chemical menopause, but I do think there's a psychological piece. I've noticed that.
Yeah.
So you had the kids one time. Every round I had, a friend would come with me or like a family member, somebody would come. You came and wore that shirt. That's why we're wearing pink.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing, you say like, you're so strong and I appreciate that so much, and a lot of people have told me that, you handled this with such grace and you're so strong. I was a train wreck. People don't see the nights. Nights were really hard. I would like remember when you came over, I like howled. I like couldn't even say anything. You showed up and I just was like made this weird guttural primitive noise.
I remember
I was so scared.
thinking in 30 years with you, and I've seen you go through some hard shit. I remember telling Ben, I don't know how you don't cry. And then
I've processed it so much.
I remember saying like, I've never heard that noise come out, Kara.
Yeah. And I would do that at night. Nights were hard. I would curl up into the fetal position and just howl. And I was in a very dark headspace. I thought, my husband must know something I don't know. My doctors know something I don't know. They know that it's worse than they're telling me. I couldn't get a grip on my head. And it's really hard to explain it. I know the women that I've gotten really close with recently. I'm not going to name their names. I don't know how they would feel about that, but there's women I've gotten really close to who have gone through this right behind me and they get it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is the most primitive fear you can experience. It's just hard to put into words. Even at this point, talking about it, it's still a little distant. It's just under the surface, but it's still distant. But it is terrifying. It is terrifying it's like you go through something like this, and now it's like I see behind the curtain of life. I have a different perspective on things.
I will say you are not. You didn't come out the same.
I didn't come out the same at all. And for that, we talk about this at some point. I am grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
I see, we talk about, oh, life is so fragile. It's like, you don't really get it until and people would say, well, anything could happen to any of us at any point.
People would say that to you?
Yeah. And it's like, okay, if you're on a bridge and one side is life and the other side's death and you're halfway on the bridge, you're in a different ballpark than everyone else.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's
the
amazing.
Things people say are really interesting.
And I do want to circle back to and apologize for saying you were so strong because
no, you don't need to apologize for that. I like your
you do?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think people want to be like, but I didn't want to have to be strong. Like I didn't want to be in that position. I didn't want to pull on strength.
I don't feel that.
Okay.
I never felt like, woe is me. Why me? I never had that. Also, you asked how I got through it. I mean, my faith is huge for me. It always has been. I've always had a really close relationship with God, and I just like leaned on him like you wouldn't believe. But yeah, I did. It was really, really hard. I just knew I had to do it. And my dad always says like, Carrie, you're so determined. You're so determined. You're determined. You did this. It was like that kicked it into gear. And it was like, you know what? This is just a thing I need to take care of. I just need to take care of it. I need to do it. Go, go, go. Do it, do it, do it.
Yeah, I definitely, from my perspective of it, the removal of your breasts and all of that didn't really phase you at all.
But it phases a lot of women.
Understandably
Yes.
so.
Yes.
But for your journey,
Yeah.
that really wasn't a part of the conversation.
Nope.
The chemo, the hair, yes, like that
Yeah.
was for you was a bigger deal. But no, the actual like removal of all of that was kind of like a given.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah. Well, and truth, I'll be really honest. It was like, all right, I'm gonna have implants put in. I mean, it's probably gonna look better than what I had before.
I'm so proud of you for finding any glimpse of a silver lining.
You have to. So morning of the surgery, I was like up at 3, just ready, ready for the surgery. But hey, I'm not, I want to be sensitive to others. Not everyone feels like that. Not everyone's journey with cancer or breast cancer is different. And, that part I was not. Day of the surgery, I was like stoked, ready.
Mm-hmm.
So many people were posting on Instagram. A friend of ours had shirts made that said Kara's crew. And it just was really neat to see like random people kind of crawl out of the woodwork to support. It was really cool. But so that's how I got through. I just knew I had to do it. I had the kids and it wasn't even like, obviously I want to live, but it wasn't, this is the part that is hard.
Cry. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't, yes, I wanted to live, but it was about my kids.
Yeah.
I could not leave them. I had to be here for them. I was going to say 5 and 3. They were 6 and 4. And I didn't want that to be their story.
We didn't bring tissues. What were we thinking?
Oh no, and I don't even have like a baggy shirt. Use my shirt. Use my shirt. So that was the hard part. It was like, if I'm not here anymore, I'm not here. But God, please don't let me leave these kids behind. So far I'm still here. And I do a Signatera test. It's a newer test. I do it every 3 months. They've taken a sample of my tumor. They compare it to the they take my blood and then they look at the sample and they're able to see if there's any trace cancer cells.
How often do you do that?
Every 3 months. I don't have to do it every 3 months, but I want to.
I remember the first one you did was very, very nerve-wracking.
I came and you did some work with me, like visualization and stuff. Remember? It was I was terrified and it was a negative. I got a negative, which is so amazing. It's positive that it was negative. I've had 3 negatives. I do another test in just a couple days. But so far so good. And my doctor, my oncologist, he's like, he told you asked him questions and he looks at us and he looks at you and he's like, oh, her prognosis is great. It's her head. She needs to get her head. Remember? Because you spiral. My friend and I are writing a book on this.
Everybody spirals though.
Yes, but I would imagine mind goes to weird places you can't trust. It's like your mind is hijacked is the best way I can put it. It's not to be trusted. It's compromised and very bizarre thoughts. It wouldn't matter. Again, how did I get through it? I would cling to certain phrases that I would hear from certain people or doctors. It's not as bad now, but I still continue to have a hard time hearing about like any cancer story. At the time, it was like, please no one tell me any cancer story that is not going well. I can't, that would send me.
I think still that's hard. Yeah.
It's hard, but not nearly as hard in the moment. When you're in it, it's like, you just can't hear it.
I mean, to be clear, we're not talking about a faraway past. This is a very recent part of your life. You got diagnosed right before you're 40 and you're 41.
Yeah.
So it's still
fresh. But then it was like, oh, I would decompensate.
Yeah.
Just go into hysterics, So
I just had a question for you.
Yeah.
You're talking about the chemo. I don't know. I'll come back to it, but therapy. Did you go to therapy during the journey
I did. I got linked up through UCLA. They had a program and I
Mhm.
met with a man. He was great. I did like maybe 4 sessions, and ultimately what was determined is I had to just wrap my head around the uncertainty, because that's really what it comes down to. It's the uncertainty of not knowing, like,
That's awful though. That's so
oh, it's
hard.
gut-wrenching. And it's one thing to talk about it or to hear someone talking about it, but when you're living it, it's
Yeah.
a whole different ballgame. It's terrifying. And it's like a grim reaper. It haunts me. It's always going to be there. Like, what if it comes back? Because if it comes back, that's not good. It can go straight to stage 4.
So this might be a really naive question, but
Mm.
if I'm thinking it, maybe someone else's too. If all your breast tissue is gone,
Mhm.
where could it come back?
It's a good question. So the idea is that they get everything out, you get clean margins, not in the lymph node, then you do the chemo to blast any little cell, like a rogue cell that could have broken off, and it could go anywhere. I mean, it can come back into the bone. It can come back as in the lungs, the lymphatic system. It can come back anywhere. It can come back into the skin. It can come back into the nipple. Women have had that happen, but like honestly, at least typically that's like kind of straightforward from what I've heard, the stories I've heard. Can't speak for all cases. It's like, okay, there it is, let's get it out and then do what we need to do. But if it's in like, one of the other places, that can be dicey to say the least.
Okay, so you made it through the chemo journey. You did lose your hair. You had
Mhm.
some very, very good looking wigs.
I did. Yeah.
Looked really good and really cute in your wigs. Got to play a couple personalities.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really big moment when you stopped wearing them. I was really proud of you
Yeah.
to just because you were so hot under them.
So hot, especially with the hot flashes. It's
Yeah,
like,
you were like so hot.
yeah.
So just for somebody that, your hair was such a part of, I mean, for anyone that doesn't know you, like long, gorgeous, big, thick, like just beautiful hair. And for you to just embrace essentially at first, like almost a shaved head.
Yeah.
Thank God you have the face you have
Oh,
because you
thank you.
pulled it off seamlessly.
Thank you.
But yeah, it really showed you just stepping into like self-worth, right? And confidence and being like,
Yeah.
this is what I've been. Do you think going through having cancer really pushes you to be like, this is not what I'm going to care about?
100%. It's, I mean, things that used to bother me don't bother me nearly as much. And I was literally thinking about that on the way here. I think it's because my nervous system's shot. I mean, when you go through something like that, everything else is like, it like habituates. Everything else like desensitizes or
Mhm.
gets flattens out.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, there's just like, I could not care any less about things that I used to care about. Yeah.
And I know another beautiful thing watching what you've done with your experiences, you're really involved in talking to other women going through it. You just mentioned you're writing a book with a
Mhm.
friend. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, we're working on it. She's a couple months behind me. And she's also in grad school. She's got a little one, so we're not doing it as fast as we would like to, but we're working on it and we're gonna do it. We're gonna put it out there. And
What's it
it's
going to be about?
just our journey, sort of like a double memoir.
Yeah.
And granted, not all cases end the way that ours have.
Mhm.
So we'll need to be mindful of that in writing the book. We can't have a chapter that's like on the other side. It's like not everybody makes it to the other side. And I'm have a very humble awareness of that. Um,
But
yeah.
you did, and that is part of your story, and it's a hopeful
Yeah,
story and a
that's
good
what it's.
ending.
Yeah, the whole purpose of the book is to just help women going through it. Number one, really feel that they're not alone and that we really understand what it does to the headspace. There's a whole chapter, we call it the spiral, what it does. Um, and again, even being a little bit removed from it, it's hard for me to find the words
Mhm.
to really capture it, but it's a weird place. It's a weird headspace to be in. And we want women to know, like, hey, we know exactly what you're talking about. And here's some tools. She's in an MFT program. I'm a licensed therapist. Here's some tools that we found helpful. Here's some tools that maybe other women have found helpful just to get you through it.
I think it's pretty incredible that you guys are doing that. What do you wish you knew, maybe if anything, at the beginning?
Once I got diagnosed or before diagnosis?
Well, let's go to before diagnosis. Well, even I know your huge thing is when that doctor told you come back in 6 months.
I'd have been like, hell nah. Get me a biopsy like tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're not gonna mess with this. And everyone else I've talked to is like, you had a 3-centimeter mass in the upper outer quadrant of your breast. That's where breast cancer is. So I would have really pushed and advocated for myself and paid out of pocket. And I'll tell you what, little shout out to our friend Carly. The reason I went back for the follow-up appointment way, way, way back, I had the first set of images done, right? And I was told it's a fibroadenoma, come back in 6 months. In between there, I talked to my friend Carly, whose mom I ended up working with, surgeon. And I said, yeah, they're telling me it's a fibroadenoma. And she said, just be careful because I know someone who was told it was a fibroadenoma and she just started chemo. It was breast cancer. Had she not, this is how I feel like God works in my life. Had she not said those words, I would not have gone back. I would have assumed it was a fibroadenoma and I might not be sitting here. So thank you, Carly, for saying that.
I know you've really analyzed a lot of things you've done, right? Choices you've made throughout your life, feeling like maybe, I think you feel like maybe you've done things that caused the breast cancer.
Could have, yeah.
Could have, I mean.
I'll never know, but
yeah.
I can talk about those things.
Okay.
One thing was I was eating, because I think every woman listening is probably like, shit, how do I avoid it? I don't know how you avoid it completely, but I can share what I think. I could be wrong. But I was eating these Morningstar nuggets. They're made of soy, and I would eat them every week for over 10 years. They were really good. They were like a soy, plant-based, quote unquote. And they're full of like phytoestrogens and all kinds of shit that messes with the endocrine disruptors. And I ate them religiously, sometimes twice a week. So it was like 6 to 7 nuggets every week. And I'm being 100% accurate. It was every week for over 10 years.
No, I believe you. I know your eating habits. Like you're very specific.
They were a staple. So, did that do it? Who knows? They say, well, soy is good for you. And it's like, this is not natural soy. The United States doesn't have natural soy. Everything is either GMO or it's some weird, we don't have natural soy here. In Asian countries, they do. And ironically, the women in Asian countries have the lowest incidence of breast cancer. They're not eating crap soy, filler, that kind of stuff. So would not have eaten that. Probably would not have been having a grande espresso frappuccino every day for over a year. Just 40 grams of sugar at 8 a.m.
Does that amount of sugar contribute to it?
It's mixed. They say, some sites are like sugar feeds cancer cells and other are like, no, it doesn't. They don't know. They're arguing about that, I guess. But I just wouldn't have done that. That type of sugar can't be good for the body. I would have eaten less processed packaged foods. And my oncologist, he has said, yeah, stay away, eat a lot of vegetables, fruits, all the things we hear, but we just don't think it's going to happen to us. That's the thing. Like I took my body for granted. I thought I was always really healthy, would get sick and get well easy and never, broke anything. And there it was, no family history.
What advice do you have? Well, this is a 2-part. I guess I would say, what advice do you have for women that are going through the journey right now? And what advice do you have for people who know someone who is and supporting someone the right way?
Yeah, those are really good questions. For women who are going through it, connect with people who are safe. Connect with people who say the right things at the right time. Stay away from people who don't say the right things at the right time.
There's just no room for error.
There's no room. Like you can't be talking to people who are going to minimize it in any way or make it about them or, well, yeah, my aunt dealt with that and hers was stage 4 and it's like, no, this is not a time. If you know someone if you're going through it or someone who's going through it, now is not the time to talk about yourself at all.
Don't compare notes.
Don't compare notes. Don't minimize inadvertently sometimes, unconsciously or inadvertently, accidentally, we minimize. Just be very careful. Just listen. Listen and say, I'm here. I'm here. We're going to get through this. You're going to get through this. What do we need to do? What's next? What do you need? What do you need? Maybe they don't want to go into problem solving mode. What do you need?
Mm-hmm.
And just try to read the room. Like, what do they need? Do they just
Mm-hmm.
need to be heard? Do they need to be hugged? Do they need to get out and go on a walk? Like my people know me. They knew what I needed and what I didn't need. Get help, get therapy, talk to someone who specializes in this. If you can, I will say again, a very humble awareness and gratitude that I even have insurance that covered all of us,
Right.
that I have the resources. Like the women that don't, God, my heart goes out to them. But there are free services as well. But like just, all of it, the meds and the surgery and if you don't have a good insurance plan, part of mine was out of pocket. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But I would say just get connected, get into but be careful. Because like if you do a support group, you're gonna sit and hear everyone else's story and it might not be like yours and you might not want to hear that.
Right.
So just know what you need.
Did you ever do a support group?
No. Oh, here's another one. If you're going through it, try to stay off Google. Don't diagnose yourself because we're wrong so many times. Be careful on Instagram. I went down so many rabbit holes of these women and their stories and you get sucked into it and don't do it. Don't do it.
What things do you think women should be doing to try to stay healthy and avoid
Yeah.
cancer?
Yeah. Again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not really qualified to say for certainty that certain things work or don't work. But I think this is one thing you can use Google for this. Google the benefit of exercise, physical exercise with women and reducing breast cancer. It's a thing. There's a certain amount of minutes per day or per week that lowers the risk of breast cancer substantially. I'm talking like 30 to 40% or like 50%. So physical exercise, according to what I've read, is huge.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Diet, avoid processed foods. You want a lot of like cruciferous, like fruits, vegetables, whole grain.
I remember your counter.
Oh yeah.
Just being like
everything's healthy.
Like Whole Foods.
It was. Yeah, we went right to the store. I got like ginger roots and like flax seeds, chia seeds, and try to find a good doctor. That's a big one too. If you're in it, sorry, pivoting back. If you're in it, find a good doctor that you trust. If you don't like your doctor, find another one.
Advocate for yourself.
Advocate. Don't stop at anything until you have the information you want and need.
I think we want to trust professionals, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think, we've talked about this, like your gut instinct, right? Like,
yeah.
If you feel like something's not right, push forward.
Yeah. I remember standing in the kitchen. I was talking to my husband and this was before I had seen anybody about it. And I just felt it. And I had like diagnosed myself on Google. I thought it was a fibroadenoma. I remember I was standing in the kitchen one day and all of a sudden I had kind of like a sharp little, like a pain in there. And I said to my husband, I was like, this isn't right. I was like, I better have this looked at. Maybe it was God. Ding.
Well, sometimes
Kara.
I think that's what intuition is, right? I mean, you can come from whatever place you want to. I don't like to get touchy, but it could be spiritual, faith-based, religious, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think intuition, gut, God, faith, like I think it's all one and the same. I think that's what's happening. I think. Intuition, right?
I knew something was wrong. So I went in and had it looked at.
Do you want to say anything about mammograms?
Oh, yes.
Because I know you turned 40. For our close-knit group of friends, we all are a few weeks after you, and we all ran and made our appointments. And now I'm already due for my next one, which is crazy. It's been that long, but we're all very vigilant because of you. You want to pass that along to anyone else?
Yes. Now they say, I guess insurance doesn't cover. They're arguing about that because again, women are getting younger.
Mm-hmm.
So the rates are going up and women are getting younger. They don't really know why. But so we're kind of lobbying to like get the age lowered, but get a mammogram. I don't think it's safe to wait. Personally, I don't think it's safe to wait till 40. The women that I know, all of them were under 40. I was a couple days under 40. Some of them were like 36, 39.
So wild. So I wonder when that number's going to change.
It's insurance crap. They're not going to,
healthcare.
It's a whole other thing.
Shit.
But try to get a mammogram. There's a mobile unit that you can go to. You can, Google mobile. I think it's like just Google mobile ultrasound breast cancer. And you can do it that way and pay out like a reduced rate out of pocket, or maybe they take insurance too. But just push. Like if you see your doctor, say, I want a mammogram.
Also, I know when I made this last appointment, I don't remember what it was, and they told me to ask when I went in, but there was like an additional imaging you could do that's out of pocket, but it gives better images. And I have implants, right? So I also have to. I thought I was going to get an ultrasound when I did my first one, but they didn't. They just gave me a standard mammogram, even though I have implants. So I think that makes it a little bit more confusing for me too, like the implant in the way, whatever. But I know there's an additional something I'll know in a couple of weeks that you can do out of pocket.
I think it might be like there's thermography. I think you can do. I don't know what it's called, but there's also the double. You want a mammogram and an ultrasound. And I think the doctors say that they can detect breast cancer with a mammogram, even if you have implants. But then I've heard otherwise. And I know women personally who had a mammogram and it was clear and they had breast cancer. It's tricky, but you just do what you can do. You do the mammogram, you do the ultrasound.
You just do it.
And you
yeah,
try as best you can to do what's in your circle of influence, right? Like if you can get a mammogram and an ultrasound, just get it done.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say?
Just that for women who know someone or women who are going through it, it's treacherous and it's scary, and just reach out for support. Again, people who you trust who can hold the space for you. Reach out and just know that you're not alone. There's a lot of women dealing with this, a lot, and there's help and there's ways to feel supported.
I know we've talked about doing this episode, and thank you for sharing your story and being so open. And I love you so much.
Thanks, Jess. Thank you for being there for me throughout this mess of a journey.
I'm just so happy it's this side of the journey now. And I know you've connected with so many women. I'm just in awe of you.
Thank you.
I love you.
Thank you. Love you.
All right, guys, here's the deal. If you like what you hear,
And we know you do,
be sure to like, subscribe,
and write us a review.
That rhymes.